Okay, so welcome everyone. This is the Ed Talk from Suzanne Rankin. I won't say a huge amount because Suzanne's going to take you through an introduction herself, but Suzanne is the Chief Executive of Cardiff and Vale University Health Board. And I'm delighted so many of you could make it today. But without further ado, I will hand over to Suzanne. And Suzanne, I think you have a presentation you would like to share.
I do. I don't know if I'm breaking rules, Kelly, but maybe that sets the tone for the conversation. So I think normally there isn't a slide set for TED Talks, but anyway, I'm breaking that rule, I'm afraid. So I hope you all forgive me for that in advance. So yeah, as Kelly has said, I'm Suzanne. I'm the Chief Exec at Cardiff and Vale University Health Board, which is a great privilege to have that role. And I work amidst an amazing team of colleagues. I've been here just over 3 years now, and for the most part, I absolutely love it. But as in all roles, there are challenges, and that's just the way of it, isn't it? And it does rather come with the badge. And I don't know if I'm trying to check on the screen by looking at the pictures. I don't think there's anyone on here that other than, let me look, anyone I know really well. I know Ross, probably the best, but I don't know anybody else. And if I'm omitting to recognise you, sometimes it's quite difficult on a screen, isn't it? And my apologies. So I'm happy to use this session for whatever's helpful to you, but what I've got is a presentation, which is why it's a slide deck, that I have worked on for about 15 years now. And I update it and tinker with it, and basically this is me, I suppose I could call it. And if that's helpful, I'm happy to share it with you all. But do shout or stick your hand up, or I might not see, or let me see if I can use my Windows 3. Let's have a look. I think it's that one. Well, let me go to the beginning slide. That's better. This is testing me now, team. I think I've got the wrong. I've probably got the wrong slide up. Is that the first slide, Kelly?
Yes, it is. Yeah, the limitless possibilities.
Let
we can
me
see.
Come back. I can't see it. It's weird, isn't it?
Can you maximize it? Because it's kind of
I'm in sharing control. You can see
it.
Can I maximize it?
It's in the PowerPoint deck, you know, rather than the whole screen.
Like file, slideshow.
That's it.
From the beginning. Oh, all sorts going on now. How's that?
Perfect.
Now I can't see any of you now. So Kelly, you'll have to keep an eye on the hands and shout if someone's waving furiously or wants to stop me or ask a question.
I got it. No problem.
Is that okay? So what I thought I'd do is just take you through this deck that I've worked on, and hopefully you'll see why it's taken me probably 15 years of iteration. And by no means is this deck done yet. And I suppose one of the things I often share with colleagues about what I've come to know about myself and my journey is that I am either it's genetics or I have a missing part of my character, might be a vulnerability, but I don't often think to myself, oh, I couldn't do that thing. Or there's a reason I shouldn't do that thing. And Kelly was speaking to me about imposter syndrome. And when I tend to experience that is after I've landed the opportunity. And as I'll share with you, sometimes that's even the danger in the opportunity or the risk, let's call it, has to be pointed out to me. So it's quite an interesting take on that whole thing of imposter syndrome, which I think we all suffer. And hopefully you'll see through the deck and through the story that you know, vulnerability is in us all, doubt is in us all, and really the only way I've worked out how to cope with that and how to manage that is to reflect, to learn, and really know yourself, I guess. So hopefully that you'll find some of that at least are useful for reflection, as you are all very much on your leadership journey, aren't you? So this is my life on a slide. Well, I'm sure that you'll all have discerned from that I'm a nurse by background. And I will skip you around the slide just really briefly. So if I start up in the right hand corner, my career started when I joined the Navy in 1987, which is a very long time ago. And I went to that place you can see underneath that picture, HMS Raleigh. HMS Raleigh is where you go when you join the Navy and you haven't already got some kind of qualification. That's where you go for basic training. And I went there and I did marching and assault courses and cleaning of toilets with toothbrushes and all the things one might imagine, and all of the things that one can imagine happened in a place like that in 1987. It was a rather different place from what it is now in lots of weird and wonderful ways. So girls trained separately from boys, and we were all extremely young. We were in a separate part of the estate and we didn't mix much. I still did marching wearing a skirt, and I had lessons while I was there in how to apply eyeliner and do flower arranging, all of which has been extremely useful subsequently in my later life. So, but it was what I learned there, I guess, what I experienced there for the first time was deep camaraderie, the sense of being in it with a team of other people, being a little bit up against it and being utterly reliant on each other for everything, emotional support, physical well-being, and also being successful in achieving. And then if I come around the sort of top of that slide, say from right to, oh, I've got it the wrong way around, from left to right, you can see a karate person there doing some sort of martial arts trick. And that is to signify that when you were trained to be a nurse in the Royal Navy at that time, when you qualified, you secured a black belt. And so that indicates that I qualified in 1991 as a registered general nurse. And almost immediately, I was deployed to the warship you can see in the middle of the top hand side of this slide, to the first Gulf War, when Iraq invaded Kuwait, and underneath the flight deck of that warship, that's called RFA Argus, we deployed in October. We sailed down, and as some of you may or may not, most of you won't remember, but you might know, the war actually started very early in January, and we built a hospital facility in that hangar, aircraft hangar, out of containers. We built it, we stocked it, and by the time we got where we were going, I was working in the intensive care unit there, and we'd created a 25-bedded intensive care unit. Are there any anaesthetists on the session? No. Shout if you're an anaesthetist. We were using to ventilate our patients yellow brick ventilators, if anyone remembers those. They were really for pediatrics, and to say it was rudimentary and lacked a whole degree of safety would be rather understating the challenge we had. Nevertheless, it was another very formative experience in my career, and I came home safely in the April. We did receive a few casualties, but not very many, and certainly nothing that really tested the capability that had been established. And when I got back to the UK, I did two things. I met my husband while I was deployed, a naval officer. He's still in the Navy. He works in the Middle East at the moment. And I then decided that I was going to train to be a trauma nurse specialist, and I went off to the Royal National Orthopaedic Hospital and did my postgraduate training. And on completion of that, I was promoted to a nursing officer. And the picture of me in a quite outstanding uniform dating from about 1855, there is a picture of me leading the naval nursing contingent at the Royal Albert Hall Festival of Remembrance. And I had a fantastic career in the Navy, which came to an end when I decided to retire from my commission in about 2011. And that is a picture of me and my mum at Buckingham Palace, receiving an Order of Merit and various other things at a garden party, which was amazing. And my mum absolutely loved that. During the course of all of that, the bit in the middle where I'm wearing the mortarboard, I went off and did a master's degree in international studies and international defence studies, I guess, and international relations, which was absolutely amazing opportunity. And then as you come down into the sort of bottom right-hand corner there, I went off to Ashford St Peters, which is a foundation trust in Surrey, after I joined the NHS. Initially, I was the chief nurse. That's a picture of me laying hands on a patient there. And then subsequently in 2014, I became the chief executive of the trust. I hope what you can see out of this is that I kind of, every opportunity that came my way, I just took it. And it's led me to where I am today. And then you can see, so what happened in between. So in the middle, obviously saving lives in Cardiff, that's where I am now. As I said, I came here 3 years ago. And between being the chief exec in Ashford St Peters and getting here was the COVID pandemic. And this is a little story to sort of make the point. I got a phone call one morning quite early in the pandemic from a lady called Baroness Dido Harding. I don't know if any of you know her. And she said, you know, Matt Hancock has asked me to set up NHS Test and Trace. I'm wondering if you would come and work with me on that, you know, and join the mission to save the nation from, this was back in March 2020. And immediately I thought, what a brilliant opportunity. Of course, I'm going to help come and save the nation. It never occurred to me there'd be any danger in this opportunity. Within one day, I'd had the phone call, I'd done an interview, and by 8 o'clock in the evening, I had been appointed as the National Director for COVID-19 containment. And I was starting in the morning, and my first job in the morning was going to brief the Home Secretary, which I felt very, very, very prepared to do, as you can imagine. And on the way home, I rang my son, who had just started his first year at university, to tell him this. What at that point I was thinking was quite exciting news. You know, I was going to work at the centre of government, you know, during this national emergency. And I told him the news, and he said to me, "This is the." He was very wise, even though he was only 18. He said, "Mum, I'm not sure this is a great idea. You know, this could. How are you going to contain COVID-19?" I mean, all very, very sensible questions. And the hell do you know about it? You're going to brief the Home Secretary in the morning. And of course, at that moment, the sort of reality of the situation I was finding myself in and about to embark on became very real for me. So, you know, the old saying, out of the mouths of babes, very much. And I guess, you know, if I'd have thought of all those things before before embarking on that opportunity, would I have taken it? I don't know, maybe not. I hadn't thought of them. It hadn't occurred to me, as obvious as they might appear. And probably I wouldn't have been in Cardiff today, because it was when I'd sort of done that job, which is a whole slide deck in itself. I'm not going to go there today. I went back to my trust in Surrey and I thought, oh, I need a bigger job. I need a bigger stretch. I need something quite different. And that's when I came and looked at the role that was being offered in Cardiff. Go to the next. How do I do the next slide? Oh, there it's on another screen. Hang on. See my text skills. Why can't it move forward? Hang on. Next. Oh, done it. So, sorry, Kelly. So this, I always say this is my best work. I'm not allowed to show you this picture, so please forget you've ever seen it. But that is my son, and he is by far my proudest achievement. And just to be clear, the point of this photograph was taken. That is a non-alcoholic mojito. So that is in Morocco, and I'm extremely proud of, despite all the career, all the places in the world I've been, all that I've done. I've brought up a beautiful boy who is kind and thoughtful, and yeah, I'm very proud of him. So what, you know, there I've given you my whole slide on a, you know, my whole life on a slide. What's my kind of takeaway about me? And I guess this slide tells you the answer, but I guess it came from a place of, I didn't really do any deep analysis. I didn't do any coaching. At this point, when I came up with this answer, it was from a pretty naive, unsophisticated place. But it holds true. You know, absolutely, I am by no means perfect. I make mistakes, and sometimes I say the wrong things, and sometimes I break the wrong rules, and sometimes I get myself into difficulty. And you know, we all do that to greater or lesser extent. But I've come to appreciate that I'm pretty resilient to that, and I'm able to work my way through it without having a complete failure of confidence, or of complete inertia, or a complete paralysis. I can't make the next step, and that's a pretty awesome power. And I'm extremely grateful for it. And I've worked with colleagues who have experienced a crisis of confidence, or feel disabled by how others interact with them, or indeed a mistake that they've made, and it's really devastating to see when that happens. And I suppose what I'd like to share with you today is, well, how did that resilience build? And hopefully I've shown some of that already, just by virtue of my journey. But also along the way, I've developed a bit more insight than maybe I had when I first thought, oh, that's it, that's me, and picked out this slide. I think this is the other thing that I'm really clear about, and again, not very sophisticated, not based in any deep academic, you know, methodology. It's just true, isn't it? If you do the right thing and seek always to interact with others in the right way, in a positive way, in a supportive way, in an understanding way, you know, listen to understand, then generally what you receive back is positive. If you do the other, then generally what happens is you get the other. And it's really obvious. But I think sometimes it's useful to document the obvious, just to remind yourself. And in all those circumstances, you always have the choice in how you're going to behave. And I think, you know, I would encourage you always to make the choice. I would encourage you to do what you consider to be the right thing, but always make your own choices, I would say. I love this. So I was doing a presentation for some nursing colleagues, and I was trying to draw the lines between what are considered the traditional nursing values, if you like, and the kind of leader I was definitely becoming, and the kind of leader I wanted to be. And I found this paper by Richard Wilson, and he described a kind of what might be disguised as a traditional type of leader, and he used the term heroic leader to describe that person. You know, this person would be self-confident, charismatic, possibly a bit opinionated, maybe inflexible. And then he went on to describe what he called an anti-hero leader, a leader who was empathetic, flexible, self-aware, competent, who valued others. And I thought, blimey, he's just describing what I would call nursing values. So I fully adopted those, and I've been telling nurses ever since that, you know, really they're revolutionaries. I love that kind of slightly kind of challenging perspective or characterization, but it's just there's nothing special, I don't think, in any of these values, and different people or professions claim them, as I've just demonstrated. But really, the point is, know your values, and I'll come on to that. But I just loved this. Be revolutionaries, comrades, every day. On the left-hand part of the slide, you can see a tweet from Michael West. And I'm sure most of you are familiar with Michael West's work on compassionate leadership. And if you look, this tweet was sent on the 1st of January 2022. And if you look at the time, it was sent at 4:21 in the morning. And then if you read it, it describes, you know, leaders experience emotional distress when they can't help colleagues, staff with work overload. So focus also on giving staff a voice, justice and fairness, better conditions, self-rostering, improving teamwork, better supervision meetings, education and training. I hope that helps. That was his tweet. Now, what was amazing about that tweet was that 04:21, or maybe it was 04:20 on the morning of the 1st of January 2022, I had woke up in bed. January is always a difficult time, isn't it? And I was lying there thinking about all the challenges my colleagues, my team, my organization were experiencing, and having one of those little moments where possibly felt a bit overwhelmed, a little bit like, what is my role here? How am I going to lead us through the next 6 or 8 weeks of the winter, which was feeling really challenging? And then I heard my phone ding, and, you know, probably totally shouldn't have picked it up, but of course we all do. And I saw this tweet and I thought, oh my, how amazing, Michael West has done a tweet just for me, and at perfect timing. And I just thought, you know what? He's also lying there awake somewhere, thinking these things, thinking, and his perspective is he can help us. He can help people like me, people like all of you, deal with some of that. None of what was described in the tweet is particularly earth-shattering. It's all good stuff, isn't it? But just the fact that that connection happened in that way felt very meaningful to me, and reminded me to focus on, amidst all of the priorities that I was being asked to deliver, focus on taking care of my team. And that is absolutely crucial. We cannot deliver healthcare to the people we serve without a team of people. And that team of people needs to be skilled, supported, valued, enabled, heard, and they need to be confident of the support they can expect and the opportunities they seek. And that's become clearer and clearer to me. Certainly early in my career, I was very focused on what the patient needs. You know, every strategy would have to orientate around what the patient needs, what the citizen needs, what's the service need. But I've really, really come to believe that actually the most important group for me to focus on is the team. And I'm a great follower of Michael West's work, and I know he supports this program, and that's just a slide there of some of the YouTube materials that are, you know, really easy to access, with little films that just talk to the different aspects of collective and compassionate leadership, the behaviours and so on. So I would really recommend that to you all. And he goes on to describe, you know, what does compassionate leadership look like in health services? And, you know, what he has always described is the uniqueness of the relationship between how a team experiences leadership and how they feel, and therefore the quality of the care they're able to give. He talks about real teams, doesn't he? And the emotional intelligence of how those teams are connected. And he talks to these 4 key skills and activities. So attending, and I spoke earlier of listening listening for the purposes of understanding. He talks about listening with fascination, you know, show interest. We all know, don't we, whether a person is truly listening to what you're saying, whether they're really interested, and you have to put effort into that. So it's that mindfulness, that being in the moment thing is so important. Don't be a flyby leader. Once was a bit of advice given to me. You know, there's a lot of discussion in the NHS about visible leadership, isn't there? But that isn't achieved by turning up, you know, looking in your eye and thinking, oh, I've got an hour, right, I'll whip round University Hospital of Wales, wave at a load of people and go back to my desk. That is not visible leadership. That is being flyby, and everyone knows it. They'll all know that if that's what you do. So I've tried not to do that. Understanding and having and developing shared understanding, empathizing is so important, and helping. You know, and I'll tell you, one of the things I've observed since coming to Wales particularly is no one answers an email. No one answers an email. I mean, that's a bit of an overstatement of the truth, but I do find it very frustrating. And I think, well, just answer my email. Just send me the thumbs up or something to say that you've got the message, or, you know, because I pay huge attention to answering the emails in my inbox from 2 particular constituents. So I'm a bit less worried about the ones that come from NHS Wales, etc. If I get an email from a member of the team, or I get an email from a member of the public or a patient, they get my personal attention. I don't pass them off to my PA to just redistribute them somewhere to deal with. I answer all of those emails myself. I always have done. It nearly kills me sometimes, just the volume. But I just think it's so important that when a person reaches out to you for help, you respond and you try and help them. And we've all experienced those emails that have been sent, and I'm using email as by way of kind of an example. And you know, it might be a bit of a tricky email and people just don't answer. I honestly think it's the worst thing. It's a poor behavior. Don't do it. What do leaders need? I think this is brilliant. Anyone seen the Lone Nut on the Hill video? You'll have to tell me, Kelly, if anyone's nodding or waving, because I can't see anybody. If you Google it, Lone Nut on a Hill, it's brilliant.
Yeah, I see Johnny's nodding.
Johnny's nodding. Mm-hmm. Johnny, tell everybody what the Lone Nut on the Hill video depicts.
I assume you're talking about the rave somewhere in Eastern Europe where a man disappears across the other side of a hill to dance to something in the middle of the day, and is by himself for a bit, and then is followed by the first follower who joins him, which then sort of gives license to everyone else to join in. And after sort of 3 minutes of this sort of David Attenborough description of the crowd, there's 1,000 people or so sort of dancing with him. And it's sort of the importance of not just being the lone nut, but sort of recognizing that they may have a good idea and giving everyone else license to follow.
Yeah, brilliant description. And so the point is, sometimes you have to strike out, be the lone nut, go and be the person that dances on the hill on their own. You know, if it's something you believe in, or something that takes you, or something that makes your heart sing, you know, do it. But all leaders need followers, and that sort of little film describes how that happens, and then once there's 1 or 2 or 3 then others join, you know, the sort of group think thing starts to take over. But in order to be followed, I think we have to think about how easy am I to follow. If you make it impossible for your colleagues to follow you because the striking out that you're doing is just so out there, they're going to find it hard. Most people will find that hard. Sometimes a thing that is a threat, or that I may or may not perceive as a threat to me, is actually perceived as a much greater threat to the team or others. And so as you're sort of developing your leadership insight, it's really important to understand that dynamic between yourself as the leader or a leader, how that interacts and impacts on the team, how easy you are to follow. I've definitely been a follower, definitely. And that's great too, because being a follower and being part of a fantastic team, I referred to that experience early in my career. It was brilliant. And I love it. And I love being in a team, and I love working alongside people. So you don't have to be one or the other. And you will all have your own experiences when you're the leader and when you're the follower and you're part of the team. So here comes some of the sort of, this is, I suppose, where I'm getting to now, you know, along my journey. What have I learned about myself? And hopefully I just offer this up as a reflection on myself, as opposed to sort of telling anybody what to do, but I have found these things useful. I think you've got to know what your values are, and that takes time to articulate them. And I do think it's worth writing them down. I think it is useful to have role models in your mind of who inspires you, but more importantly, why. And then, you know, as I've said, do think about the things you can do and you can influence and that you want to do, rather than the things you can't. And I know that's easily said than done, but it can be actively achieved if you focus on it. So how do you know yourself? So this is my Luminous Spark Splat. Does anybody know Luminous Spark tool? It's one of those psychometrics. I don't know if anyone's nodding, Kelly. I mean, you'll all have done them. You might even be doing them as part of this program. And that they're all much the same, really. I quite like this one because where you end up is with a visual description of your working style and preferences. And, you know, this captures me pretty well, you know. Now, what I have found useful about doing this kind of thing is, I mean, mine's a particular shape. So, you know, unsurprisingly, I'm quite over in the extroversion, the strategic thinking, people focused. You will have noticed down in the discipline driven, down to earth space and introversion, it's virtually blank. And that is the danger for me that I described and shared with you earlier. That detailed reflection or consideration, I just don't do. Even though I know I don't do it, I don't even particularly want to do it. And so what I've learned is it's important to have a team around me that helps me with those things. And then I have to actively ask them, is that a risk too far? Is that, have I missed the detail and not understood? What is it you exactly need me to do and by when? So there's something about knowing yourself, and then something about we're using that to help shape the team around you, because none of us are perfect, as I've said, and we do need those skills in order to be successful. So, you know, everyone's splat will look different, and you will navigate your way around where you're strong and where your preferences lie, and where you might need to reinforce those skills or characteristics or talents with the talents of others. I think it's also useful to know and help you understand where there might be, let's say, friction between you and another member of your team or a colleague. I certainly had an experience where when we'd both completed this piece of work and compared them, it was absolutely blindingly obvious why we didn't always kind of work well together. She was very much in the introversion space, and one of the things around the Lumina approach is that you get personas, so you get a different splat for. So I've got three, you know, one when I'm lying on the sofa at home, one when I'm at work, I've put on my work uniform, I'm at work, and one when I'm overextended, stressed, operating beyond my normal capacities. And what we could see when we compared our personas was that when I'm overextended, I just get more and more extrovert. I talk more and more and more loudly. And what she liked to do when she was overextended was go and sit down in a quiet room and think about what we were going to do about the issue. And some of my behavior was that she would go and sit in the room and I would follow her into the room so that I could talk to her more about the problem, which of course she found very challenging. And of course we were able to have a little laugh about it once we realized that actually our styles and preferences were kind of creating some of that dynamic. And once we knew about it, of course, then we could do something about it, which was amazing. Don't know, the slide's stuck now. That's back. There we go. I talked about values and beliefs. So what I did was write these down. Now I wrote these. I can't see if there's the box. I wrote these 15 years ago when I first put this slide deck together. But I do, every time I sort of come back to this slide deck and update it, or I just check, are they still true? And they're absolutely true for me. And I do think the exercise of writing down your values and beliefs is really useful, and I would really encourage you all to do it. It's not something you're going to do in half an hour. It's something that will take time and you'll want to dwell and, you know, go back to. But I just think it is so useful. Every job interview I've been for the last 15 years, I have used this slide. This is, you know, you're able to articulate what your values are, and then to the extent to which your values are supportive or interact well with the organizational values. And I won't read them all out. They're, you know, they're no particular surprise. They are kind of what you'd expect them to be. But I do really believe all of these things. I think the bottom one, I believe in the power of shared decision making and courageous challenge. That's true. I don't like to make decisions on my own. I like to do it with others. I like to involve lots of colleagues in the decision. Kelly will have experienced this. And sometimes I have to be moderated, or, you know, I have to ask my team if that works, because I'd have all 18,000 Cardiff and Vale people in every decision. That's not practical. So, you know, sometimes I have to moderate that desire, but the principle is there. Right, moving this on, trying. Oh, there we go. Okay, nearly there, folks. So I suggested that you think of a person who inspires you. So this is Nadia Hussein. You'll all know who this is. She won Bake Off a few years ago. This is actually a photograph of what she looked like in that moment. Of course, she looks very different now, doesn't she? But I was really struck by what she actually said. So I listened to the television program again and wrote it down. And this is what she said. I'm never, ever going to put boundaries on myself again. I'm never going to say I can't do it. I'm never going to say maybe. And I'm never going to say I don't think I can. I can and I will. Now, I've already told you that I probably operate a bit like that just naturally. That's my style. But it really resonated with me, because I then became aware that others almost have to say it out loud. And I thought that her speaking to that in that way, in that moment, was just so powerful and spoke so, you know, it was so contextual, you know, a Muslim woman, you know, taking her power and sharing it with everybody. It was amazing. So I do think, and what she's gone on to achieve subsequently, I do think is really inspiring. But you can pick anybody. It could be your mum, your granny, your dog. So I mean, I should have changed this slide for my puppy, Kelly, shouldn't I? Because I've got brilliant pictures of him. But I think courage is really essential. And then this bit about having a plan. I think some of you will like to have a plan. That'll be your preference. That'll be your style. And if that is your style, have a plan. It's a good thing. Some of you don't need a plan, or you don't want a plan. I never had a plan. I just sort of navigated. But it doesn't really matter. Either way, you need the courage to go forward. And I hope you can see that what I'm trying to set out is that the courage comes from that resilience, which comes from that experience, which comes from knowing yourself, which comes from identifying your leadership style, which comes from working and learning from others. Hopefully that's clear. And last of all, then, this is a photograph of a card. The day I became a chief executive, this was left on my desk by the hospital chaplain. And I just thought it was brilliant. I loved it. I loved the sentiment that was shared in it. And I think that's right. You know, if you shoot high, got high ambition for yourself, for your family, for your team, for your organization, for whatever it is you're doing, you can't really go wrong. You might not get to the moon, but you will achieve much. And I think that is something to kind of hold on to, particularly when things are very challenging. Don't let your ambition be constrained by circumstance. And maybe we can pick that up in the conversation. Right, I've finished. End of show. And now I'm
Thank
try
you,
and stop
Suzanne.
sharing. There we go. I hope everyone's still awake.
They are still there.
Oh,
Thank you, Suzanne.
Everybody's still there. That's a relief.
Everyone is still there, and I've invited people in the chat to raise their hands if they have a question. And while we wait for the first question, because the first question is always really challenging, I have a question. And you talked about imposter syndrome, and that it only really affected you after you'd committed to do something. Can you explain to us how that imposter syndrome manifests itself in you and what you do to counter that?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't naturally manifest in a sort of in a predictable way. I would say that'd be the first thing. And as a sort of the story I shared with you, on one occasion, it was pointed out to me that actually, are you capable of? Is this going to work? And then I thought, oh my God! And that's. I mean, I've just given it to you. That's what goes in my head. Oh my God, what have I done? How am I going to fulfill this expectation that I've created in the process of landing in this place, wherever it is? And I think, in a way, it's not a bad thing, because that gives you some opportunity to step back then. Because, of course, then you've got to scale the challenge, haven't you? You know, and the truth is the world goes round. The world will go round. Whether I'm doing A, B, or C, the world goes round. And I think sort of recognizing your own insignificance is sort of part of, you know, the world won't end. Cardiff and Vale University Health Board will go on with or without me, and you know, if I can make it a bit of a better place and deliver a bit better care for our patients, and you know, it's not that I don't lack ambition, but if I can have some positive influence on that, which I believe I can, then it's worth taking the risk, I guess, and just paying attention. And you know, I go back to my values, I go back to my luminous spark, I go back for reassurance from my family to say, oh, you know, do you think this is going to be okay? And they say, of course it's going to be okay, you'll be absolutely fine. You know, those places of nurture and comfort are really important, aren't they? So, you know, my mother is is still a very big influence on my life, and she'll say, "Oh, don't be ridiculous."
Puts it all into perspective.
In a kind of, it's not that she doesn't care, but she's don't be so self, whatever. So I think there is a little bit of a balance to be struck, isn't there? I don't know if that answers your question, Kelly. But
it does. Does anyone from the floor have a question? If not, I have another one. I've got plenty. Oh, yeah, here we go. Jo Sutton. Jo, what would you like to ask?
Hello. Hi, Suzanne. Thank you
Hi,
for
Jo.
sharing all of that. My question isn't fully formulated in my head, but I'm hoping when it comes out of my mouth, it will be. So it's about the characteristics and the revolution of the anti-hero. So I signed up to do Climb because I think a lot of those characteristics, I see a Venn diagram, and I wanted Climb to help me step into the power that I see are some of my strengths. I feel like I still see quite a lot of heroic leadership in the world or in some of our organizations. And I just wondered I guess what that feels like is maybe the characteristics of the anti-hero still being undervalued. And I wondered from your position if you see that any different, or how we can make them be valued and established.
It's a really good question. It's a really good question. I mean, right now we're living through a time where those heroic leadership characteristics are on the rise, aren't they? And I certainly in the NHS, in the early part of my career, it was very, very in England. I was in England, very competitive. Foundation trusts fighting over different patient pathways because income was associated with it. I won't tell you who, but a person once said to me, "I'll kill you for cardiology." I mean, now, though, and these were from people who were very traditionally in that heroic leader mode. And I think they underestimate those of us that use the more revolutionary tactics, right? I think they think we are weak and naive, and they're wrong. And and actually, I must be one of the longest serving NHS chief executives anywhere in the UK. I mean, I haven't done the homework, but I do know I've been a chief executive for coming up 15 years. I mean, that's a long. Most chief executives' life expectancy, I mean in the job, I don't mean life expectancy, is like 18 months. So there's something in it, isn't there? There's something in it. And also, yourself, don't you? I mean, I think continuity of leadership in these leadership roles is so, so, so important. When I came to Cardiff, I said, I'm coming for 10 years because I can see it's at least a decade's worth of work. It needs a decade's worth of loving, frankly, to change the culture here. And also all those changing arounds of the leadership team. I mean, we're just seeing it in England today, aren't we? NHS England's being disbanded, all that change will divert that organisation. Now, it might need doing. I'm not saying it doesn't need doing sometimes, but I think that everybody will become fearful and concerned about their own place in the system, and then they're not focusing on the really important stuff that we've got to do, which is improving care and quality for patients and in improving the experience of our colleagues and teams. So I think it's almost our role to continue to demonstrate that those compassionate leadership skills are not soft and they're not naive. They are how you get good things done. It's how you are successful, and successful organizations have compassionate leaders leading them. And there are many examples of that, aren't there, all over the world, actually. So I think we've just got to keep speaking to it. We've got to keep showing it, and we've got to keep doing it and role modeling it. And where we see those heroic leadership is necessary sometimes. Sometimes I have to make a decision, and ultimately someone has to make a decision. But if you can be confident yourself that up until that point you've done all that you can do to do it in the right way, to do the engagement, to do the conversations, and to do the reflection. And actually uncertainty is also not a good leadership place to put your colleagues and teams in. So I think we've just got to keep doing it, Jo. Keep being a revolutionary.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks for the
Suzanne.
inspiration.
Suzanne, we have a question that's in the chat from Siobhan,
Yeah.
who's on the train.
Okay.
Being a
I'll look
nut
at
on the
that.
hill can be a bit lonely if you can't bring people with you easily. Do you have any advice on helping people join you on the journey?
Yes and no. So, well, yes and yes, but there's not necessarily the two bits. I would say, number one, if you are finding that no one's joining you on the hill, then go grab somebody by the hand. And if I were you, I would go and grab the least likely person to join you on the hill and bring them. 99% of people will not resist a hand out, and they'll join you. And if you can persuade the most disruptive, the most the person who's least likely to kind of join your party, then your quid's in. Alternatively, one of the reasons I came to Wales was because I didn't think the system architecture in England was enabling to what I wanted to do. I wanted to run an integrated healthcare system, and I was doing work with schools and the local authority and blah, 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 blah. But frankly, everyone kept saying, I don't know why Suzanne just doesn't go back to her acute trust and just stop busybodying herself with all those other important things I thought was important and just run her hospital. And so the system and those around me didn't think that what I was doing was valuable. And so I went and found a place that would think it was valuable. So, you can always move to a different hill or mountain, Siobhan.
That's a great answer. Thank you, Suzanne. We've got 2 questions teed up. And if we've got time, I'd love to answer both of them. Ben first and then Jill, please.
Hi, Suzanne. Thanks.
Hi,
Fantastic. Ben. I had a similar sort of question to Siobhan, actually, but slightly different slant. I feel like during your talk today, I definitely fit in the anti-hero camp, which gives you some reassurance it's got a name rather than just loner, which is always good. But I think what I struggle with a little bit is, like with Siobhan, sometimes the ideas may seem so revolutionary to others that they're not willing to even come on the hill because they think you're a complete weirdo. So I had considered the nuclear option a couple of times about trying to find another place to work, but believe so strongly in Cardiff's ethos and ability to deliver good healthcare. I've stuck around as long as I can, but it can get quite hard. Have you had those sorts of circumstances whereby, partially this already, whereby you've been in a project where you knew you passionately had to do it, but there were so few people around you who actually believed in it? Have you been in that scenario before yourself?
Definitely. I mean, I didn't talk much about the skills that are influencing, but influencing is really important, and influencing effectively is a whole set of skills in itself. And I'm sure that within the Climb development program, you're going to get to sort of practice, see, observe influencing skills. And I think, I've always, in those circumstances, I've always kind of gone out of my way. Who is the protagonist, right? So in all teams, there'll be a leader or a protagonist, or the person who doesn't want to sort of do the change, or says, I've been here 20 years and it's always been like this and blah, blah, blah. You kind of have to go out of your way and go and have a coffee with them. And you have to find a way to surface it, in the conversation. And you can all start with, I know you've been here a long time and I know you've done great stuff and blah blah blah, but I'm just, I'm interested in the point in time we're at, and there's always a way. I mean, I'm telling you how to do it. You know how to do it. And I think that's always my first port of call, is try and bring them into the tent, or get them at least to acknowledge that you can do the thing, and if others want to join. And generally, even if they don't join in the beginning, if they see a groundswell of things happening and it's good and there's success, the other thing you can do, Ben, is come and get me to shine some light on the good thing you're doing. I mean, that is part of my job, isn't it?
Yeah.
And if it's good stuff and I'm like, and I'm spreading the word, then do you know what? That's also really powerful. I go, oh, there might be money, there might be influence, there might be, you know. So you've got to use all your tactics. But eventually, like I said to Siobhan, eventually, and it wasn't so much that people wouldn't join my party. They weren't interested in finding a way to make the healthcare we were delivering sustainable. Really, they weren't really interested in that. They just wanted to grow their turnover, or you know. And I thought, actually, you're not my people, to quote Amanda from Amanda Land. Have you seen that, where she goes, you're not my people, you know? And that's what I came to. Well, you're just not my people, I'll go find my people somewhere else, you know. But that's rare. I've only had to do that once.
Great. Thank you, Suzanne.
Thank you. Suzanne, we are 2 minutes before the end of the meeting. Do you have time to take a final question?
I do have time to take Jill's.
Okay.
Yes, of course.
That's great. Jill, over to you.
Thanks so much. I really enjoyed your talk today, Suzanne. I've been thinking, kind of got me a lot of things about communication and how you communicate the things that you feel really passionate in and what you want to innovate with successfully. And I feel that sometimes when you come to a board of chief executives, you really feel that it's really important that you get your communication right so that they think, yeah, this is a great idea. So what communication methods really speak to you as a group of chief executives that make you think, oh, they're on something here, let's show some interest, let's maybe.
Great question. Well, number one, authenticity and passion. You know, we can all feel that in others, can't we? Reveal your expertise. You know, I'm an expert in very little these days. I need experts in all the various things that we do, and I really value that expertise. So don't undersell your expertise. I can remember going into Brief and Admiral once, this is a long time ago, and it was on medical matters, if you like, and I was quite a junior officer. I was extremely anxious about this briefing. And one of the senior officers said to me, what does he know about medical matters? Zero. You are the expert. That is your power. That is your magic power today. And I think, you know, that definitely helped me in that moment. I think know your expertise and take some of your power from it. Not in a kind of, you know, power battle way, but just giving you that confidence. And then I think for me, I mean, I know what works for me. If you come into my one of my meetings here at Cardiff and Vale and you show me your idea is strategically aligned. So Suzanne, here's the vision of the organisation, here's the strategic objectives of the organisation, and here is how my plan, Jill's plan, is going to help you deliver that vision and strategy. Every time ticks the box for me, because really in an organisation of our scale and size, strategic alignment is the only game in town. If we're all doing 1,000 flowers blooming, we don't make the dials move on the big ticket items. So we have to have a strategically aligned activity. Now, wonderfully, I hope, in many ways, the strategies, the vision particularly, is written in a way that is broad enough to really enable most brilliant clinical care to be delivered. But you know, that always works for me, and it's quite a sophisticated skill, because lots of people don't do that. They come with their brilliant idea and I say, well, how is that going to help us deliver our plan? And they go, and sort of sometimes it's obvious, but be explicit about that. I hope that helps, Jill.
No, that was really great. Thank you.
That's great. So, Suzanne, there are a couple of questions in the chat which I can send you separately if you get a few moments to respond. I can circulate those to the guests today. But I just wanted to say a great big thank you for spending some time with us today. I know your time is really precious, but we really appreciate that.
It's a real pleasure. I mean, I should have said at the beginning, I do feel it's a bit, it makes me feel uncomfortable to spend an hour talking about myself. So I've lived with that discomfort for the last hour, and I'm sort of slightly relieved I can stop doing it now. But you know, I'm equally aware that my I do have a role to share, you know, and like I said, take it or leave it, guys. You know, I am no guru on leadership, right? So, you know, take what's useful and disregard what isn't. That's completely fine and thoroughly to be expected. But I wish you well on your journey, and I'm sure I will see some of you around. And I do try and support the climb. And if there are, you know, others like Ben, I can't see all, you know, CAV climbers, you'll all get an invite to the alumni meetings in due course, and that we can have more chats there.
That's great, Suzanne. Thank you once again, and
Bye,
enjoy the rest of your day, everyone.
See you, and you. Take care, everybody.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Thanks, Anne.